And talking with you, I notice you're a man of faith.
Believe in our Heavenly Father through Christ for since 1981, and I was fortunate enough to receive the precious gift of the Holy Ghost in 1983, and God began to deal with my heart in a rather special way as a servant in the later part of 1985.
And prior to your accident, what were some of those things that you just like to do in everyday life? What were those things that made you happy?
Well, I had a myriad of things that made me happy, including the Bible studies and my fellowship. My life just changed quite a bit once I came to know Christ because most of the things were centered around getting to know Him and all the people that, of course, had a common interest. But I used to play sports, so on, and I like just like everything that anybody else would like. I never drink and smoke and all that, but uh, things like that just wasn't appealing to me.
Share with us a little about the everyday life of Robert Chelsea before your accident. What were things you liked to do?
You like playing backgammon, or was it tough? Because I always be. Can you hear her?
Because
well, that's,
you hear?
That's the Dugganese. You know, I've played a lot of backgammon. I even won some awards. But Ricky was trying to just he was trying to claim that he beat me all the time. So you know how that goes.
Oh, that's what was going on.
Yeah, that's what he's trying to say.
Yeah, he said tell the truth.
I was trying to make it.
Memory.
I was trying to make it exciting.
Well, well, playing against him wasn't that exciting. We're such a, I'm so far much older than him, so obviously I have a lot more moves than he would ever have known about. But nevertheless, I did enjoy playing with him. Yeah, I like track meets and everything else. As a matter of fact, in sales, since different places I had to go, I try to make sure that I attended a baseball, football, or basketball game at the various cities that I would travel to. That would keep me out of trouble in the evening and something to do rather than go to your hotel and eat or watch television. So I'd always try to work my travels around wherever a particular team was playing. That was kind of my delight during that time. But uh, I'm probably one of those people that just love to discover new facets that is of our culture, not any one particular person's culture, but humanity has always been of personal interest to me.
And you're also very social. You liked going to breakfast on Saturdays and Sundays, or maybe even through the week. I recall you were very social.
Yeah. That's one thing I've always enjoyed interacting with different folks. And just before my accident, I had attended a social gathering. I started learning how to ballroom dance. not the kind you see on television, but this was more of a it's called urban ballroom dancing, where the cha-cha is mainly involved, and I did enjoy that. That was my social outlet when it came to other activities. So I did enjoy that. But after the accident, of course, I learned so much about the medical industry that I was never that fond of prior to my accident. But God showed me some wonderful experiences as a result of me going into a coma, coming out of that coma about 6 months later, and I was exposed to a brand new world. Obviously, I had quite a few psychological adjustments. I had physical adjustments, and I'm an amputee. Proud to say that I'm an amputee. It allows me to appreciate what they are going through. And of course, I was burned in the fire, so I have a pretty good idea of what burn survivors are going through, their obligations, responsibilities, and things that hinder us as a disabled community. And of course, as a transplant recipient, again, this was another facet of discovery for me. And so there's been quite a few, if you will, we came up with a title for a theme, Three Faces of Grace, which, in my opinion, includes of course, my life and phase that I had prior to the accident. And the second phase would be during the transition from the fire as a fire burn survivor. And of course, God has graced me with becoming the first African American to have a face transplant. So I call the book Three Faces of Grace.
That's a wonderful title. Ricky, could you tell us a little bit about when you received that call about the accident?
I was actually in New York at the time, out in the Hamptons, walking on a beach when I got the call. So I literally got the call probably 12 hours after the accident. So I was 3 hours ahead, but behind in terms of how we got that information. But I recall very well getting that call, walking down the beach, and just literally the breath being taken out of me as a result of the call from my mother.
The
So,
oldest
calmly,
person with a full face transplant. How old were you when you received that transplant?
I was 68 years old. The medical industry, the transplant industry, uh, their target was to try face transplants no older than 50 years old. So I was really very fortunate that they would consider me. Uh, at that time, I was 60, uh, I don't, 63 or 4 at that time. And so when they certify, after going through a lot of red tape, the insurance companies, of course, didn't want to support it or pay for any of the services, uh, and the follow up that would be involved, obviously the expense of the medication and so on. So that took quite a while before Kaiser Permanente uh, considered to uh, join forces with Brigham Women's Hospital and do the follow up, any blood tests and biopsies, things like that that could be done locally in Los Angeles area. Then that took about a year and a half to get that paperwork out of the way. And so I was actually certified in 2018, I think. So I was still 67 at the time because I didn't turn 68 until November.
Now, let me ask you this. For a face transplant, you would need a donor's face and donor tissue. Can you tell us about the process?
The process is primarily conducted by the hospital and also the donor bank uh, because they have to search out primarily face transplants were done on the East Coast, and the majority were done in the New England area. As a result of that, that's where they look for the patients and the donors. In my case, however, in New England, there's about 3% black in the New England area. So it was very unlikely that they would find a match for me. So they had to go outside the area to find a match. But the process is exactly the same as it would be on any other uh, transplant. However, the difference is when they take a liver, or lung, kidney, and heart, and so on, when they take those organs, they can basically take one out and you might say put one in. In my case, with a full face, they had to actually strip my face. So although it was burned, they really had to take all the portion of my face and leave my skeleton open, so to speak. And the same for the donor. Ricky can explain to you better how the two teams coordinated that because uh, I was on the preparation table being prepared to receive the donor, but Ricky was there to see a great deal of it take place from both ends. So if you don't mind asking Ricky to add to that.
Yeah, so sort of. I was there. Actually, there is an interview that was done on Robert where they actually interview Dr. Pomahawk, who was the lead surgeon. But basically, in general, what happened, and Pomahawk will give you all the details, but at the time that Robert went into preparation for the surgery, the lead surgeon, Dr. Pomahawk, and a team of other surgeons flew to procure the donor face. And so what they have to do is keep that face alive, if you will, until the team gets there. So they basically flew from Boston to a undisclosed location to procure the face. While they were procuring the face, they were prepping Robert for the return. And so I believe they were gone for almost a day. It was quite a few hours before they returned in order to start the procedure.
In reading, I found out that it takes basically a minimum of 16 hours to do the face transplant. How long did it take for yours?
It's hard to put an exact hour on there because at Brigham Women's Hospital, that there's part of that team has to prepare me. Part of that team also has to travel to the location where the donor's face is, get in a plane, travel to that location, and meet another team that's preparing the donor's face. So Dr. Pomahawk has to leave in charge a group that will prepare my body and my face while he and a team of 5, 6, 7, 8 people will fly into another state altogether and meet with the medical team that's preparing the donor space. Uh, Once that's all done and they finally get the donor space or whatever they need, then Dr. Palmerhawk and his team flies back to Brigham Women's Hospital and join the team that was preparing me. Then they start the surgical procedure. So how many hours? Who knows? But it far exceeded the 16 hours, the official 16 hours of my phase. But their preparation, I'm sure, was, not to mention the coordination of everything, and they only have a window of about 3 hours once they uh, procure the donor's face. They only have about 3 hours to use that face onto me. So the process is pretty quick once they have procured the donor's face.
Oh, okay. And as a double lung transplant recipient myself, I think my window was 2 hours. And I was going to ask you about medications. I'm sure you face rejection also. And what are some of the medications? Because in educating minorities about transplants, a lot of us are actual organ transplant recipients. So a lot of us take the same medications. What are some that you take as regarding to transplant?
I take the same medications that you take, the Envarsus, Myfortic, and so on. The three basic medications that all transplant recipients have to take, I take those as well. Now, keep in mind, we all have special conditions. Because of my burns, for an example, my intestines had to be taken. uh, So much was infected that they took 2/3 of my intestines out. So uh, I have to be treated for things like that that may not be for someone else. So all in all, the three medications are something that all transplant patients must take. There are opportunities to take certain medications that you may not have to take for life. They do have medications that they're testing now, uh, where they may only have to take it for a year, but it's still conditional at this point. I know about it because that is part of the program that I was under for me to have the transplant. But as of right now, I still take the same medications that the average person takes for their for transplantation. But mine
So,
is not
but
a kidney, lung, and liver.
yeah, and I was going to say, just in summary, you're taking upwards to 24 different types of medication, right? Aren't you somewhere between 18 to 24 now?
Yeah. Yes. 14 to 16 in the morning. I take about 6 in the afternoon and about 7, uh, about 7 at night.
You both sort of highlighted that there are three medications that you must take, but the real emphasis is that if you don't take it, your chances of the organ or the body rejecting the organ increase by like 100 times or something. So you literally cannot afford to miss taking your medicine. So it's not like, blood pressure medicine, you might miss it 1 hour and take it, another hour. These, you have to be pretty disciplined about taking them, because if you miss it, it then, throws your body off where you may reject the organ.
Now, how much do your medications run? Do you have to pay for them out of pocket, or does some agency or somebody purchase them for you?
The medications, uh, it's about dollars is the expense for medications, although some of it is copay and some of it isn't. But overall, uh, yeah, and because it changes so often, uh, they're all watching me so closely. They're making adjustments at least twice a week. I'm receiving either a different medication or we're adding or taking away a particular medication. So those adjustments, uh, they obviously they become very expensive, and so any help would be a big help. But main thing is trust God. You know, He's going to take care of all of our needs. It's always nice when we know that others have a sufficient amount of empathy, and if they're financially able. But don't take your rent and send it to me because you need to take care of your own bills and own responsibility. So that's the way I see it.
I've had my lungs for like 13 years, and I have not had, and I just thank God because I have not had any problems with them throughout the 13 years, never even been back admitted to the hospital again. So I got a
Wow.
good, perfect set of lungs, and it's just a blessing to be able to experience the transplant. Another question was if you were not offered the opportunity to have a transplant, how would your life be different?
I think I would continue on as I am doing. The the gratitude didn't start from having a transplant. You know, He's allowed me to go through valleys of shadows of death, and this is another shadow that I got a chance to be exposed to. So um, there's there is no slowing down or anything that would have hindered me had I not had the breast transplant. This is
And some of those changes, Chelsea, would be how he ate and drank fluids. So before the surgery, he was using a syringe to basically eat and drink to keep food in his mouth and having to either throw his head back or be in a reclined position to keep fluids and food in his mouth. So that's a significant change with the surgery.
And I remember he mentioned that when we were talking on the phone one day too, that he um, had problems, difficulty swallowing, things like that.
yes, that's true. If I had not, then well, number one, I wouldn't have lips. So uh, my mouth would continue to be exposed. And people used to ask me, why don't I cover my mouth with a mask? But when your lips are open like that, your saliva wettens the mask. And so I'd have to change the mask every 5 minutes because I had no, and the saliva continued to drip. It had no way of holding it or swallowing it back, bringing it back. And part of my tongue was burned off in the fire too. So trying to maneuver uh, is difficult. Although I still have, my tongue was still burned. That was not replaced. Uh, but I've almost forgotten what I went through before the transplant. It's, I, fortunately, I've just been able to move on. So who knows what's next? I didn't have hair for 30 years. Now I have hair. I make all the adjustments. But, so I don't know. People say face transplant, and that's true, but it's really I have another forehead. I have another head. I have another uh, more cheeks, another nose, uh, more. I have lips now. Upper and I have a new chin. I have new cheeks. So all of this affects me differently. You might have noticed me doing this sometimes. It's because the nerve endings, unlike a organ transplant, liver, lung, kidney, my face has so many blood vessels and nerve endings that had to connect, and they're still connecting. Two years later, they're like sharp needles, just trying to connect. And so that's from my eyelid to my nose to my head, all over my head. For, so that it keeps you aware that this is a face transplant. And I don't take it for granted, but I do have lips. I am able to hold the food better. I'm still learning how to how to. I cannot drink out of a cup yet, nor out of a bottle, but I can drink out of a straw. Everything is brand new. You have to train those muscles to on your cheeks. That's why you see the same expression on my face. My face is not used to puckering yet, or frowning. All those facial expressions because of nerve endings. Are there any other questions? There's much that I could mention in terms of how you can trust God in all things, no matter what. I mean that. I know the subject might be to what happens with a face transplant. That's very important to know that there is that possibility, and that hope. I really hope that gives others hope, and particularly knowledge, just in case they do see an opportunity where someone could use a face transplant. Knowing that it is available, there's a great deal of success. However few there are, there's only about 46, 47 patients that have had it in the whole world. And so I hope the diaspora will be able to have a little greater degree of confidence that they can trust the system, if you will, in having donors participate in. I mean, how could you and I talk today if it had not been for you receiving the lungs or me the face? So it is important that we encourage others to consider it. And we definitely need our family members to become a donor. That is so very important for the sake of your fellow man. So if I had to close with that, I would close with that. But most importantly, above all things, I know it's up to you whether you do it or not, but man, the dividends that God provides uh, are immeasurable. And for anyone to forsake themselves and not trust God, not seek Him, is a tragedy for themselves. So I encourage you to look to the one that has created you. Uh, he's the one that provided. I didn't have to, this accident, I don't have any regrets about the accident because God showed me so much. The things I learned, what did it cost me? A leg, a feet, a foot, some fingers and toes. It was well worth it. All the disciples, they died of brutal death, and yet they rejoiced every single day. The joy that's provided, in spite of how it physically looks, the joy that's is outmeasures, far outmeasures anything that we can physically experience.
Well, Mr. Chelsea, you are indeed a walking, breathing, talking miracle. And you have such a good spirit about you. I was about to raise my hands when you were talking back then. He almost took me there. Mickey. Down. Yes, it's about transplants. Certainly appreciates the time of both of you. Wanted to share your story to be able to tell others the experience you've been through the difference it's made in your life, and who is the cause of the blessing that you received.
I just wanted to say, to piggyback on what you said, Chelsea, is that one of the things that is not known by a lot of people in our diaspora is that we give at what we represent to the population, call it 13, 15%. But what's unknown to a lot of people is that we have a need that's in excess of 35%. So it's really important to become a donor, because we have a need that's almost triple what we actually, line up to donate. So it's quite significant. I also like looking at it as it's a way to create a legacy. Like, often people think that there's no way that, they have an opportunity to build or create a legacy in this life. And one way is just signing up to become a donor. And so you see what it does to improve and change the lives of people. So it is outrageously amazing when somebody just signs up to become a donor.
Absolutely. And it takes a lot of educating also. That's another thing we have to do in order to eliminate those myths and those misconceptions that we have, because people have heard different things growing up or experienced things, and that's not necessarily the case, because there are so many of us walking around whose lives have been changed because someone said yes. Someone has given to us the gift of life.
Yeah.
We encourage people, have the conversation. That's always what I like to say to people. Have the conversation. It's not for everybody, but if more of us would give, especially kidneys, because we know through the African American community, there are more people on the kidney waiting list than any other organ.
Yeah. So you can definitely learn more about it. Just go to robertchelsea.org. I have to give him that plug. You can learn about face transplants, about donating. And, if your heart so, fills you, you can actually donate to his GoFundMe as well, which is Robert Chelsea Journey at GoFundMe.
How many people do you know that have been blessed with a full face transplant and live to tell the story?
We appreciate you too for helping share this story.
Is it anything else? Or are we ready to close out? Sing a stanza of God.
Amen.
Well, we thank you so much for your time and appreciate you.
You too.
All righty. Good night.
Good night.